Okay, I have a design challenge for you, Chuck. One that I ran into when I was helping someone, bringing someone into an organization where we do train the trainer programs and trying to get a course developed or a series of courses developed based on technology. And so these are train the trainer folks, and some of them come into this curriculum, their cohort, 5-year cohort, with zero technology experience. They maybe can find the on button to a computer. And that might be it. And then on the other range, you may have some students in that class who are making like macros in Excel and making animated PowerPoint presentations with ease. And so they're sitting in an 8-hour class, a technology class that is mandatory. It's part of the curriculum. And they're bored out of their minds. And then the newbies are really frustrated because they feel inadequate. They feel like they don't even belong there because, gosh, they don't even know how to turn a computer on. And so trying to develop a course for this kind of a diverse population is a challenge for many designers. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one who runs into this issue.
Every designer, every facilitator, every training organization has similar problems because we amalgamate populations for training. So we don't look at prerequisites generally. I mean, we do for certain things like certifications or whatever, but that's the entry point. That's not the average across your cohort. So it's completely normal to have these situations. And there's a couple of design things that you can do, but they're not always practical. I mean, the best design thing is to break it into different classes. So where you have one class, maybe you need 3 to get people up to speed to get into the last one or the third one. Or you might have post sessions, people that you can't really bring up to speed. How do you help them after the class? How do you make sure that the mastery gets there? Or in some cases, you do the best you can, but this is a very common problem. And the difference between professional design and others is the fact that we address the issue. We look at ways to solve the problem. And there's as many different ways to do this as there are facilitators. But I guess the one thing that everybody needs to realize is this is an issue. It's always going to be an issue until facilitators and designers have total control over what happens, and that is hardly ever the case. So if you're a one-person shop, it's a different situation because you generally don't find this the same way that people do that go into big organizations and teach or go into big organizations and design. And I am guessing that the group that you're working with, probably a pretty big organization, probably a team of designers even. And what they do is they work across these vast populations of incredibly diverse people, different backgrounds, different knowledge bases. And the other thing you find too is that people don't have necessarily prerequisite skills because they never had to have them. Right? They're into something new. There's something that was never a requirement for them. The organization wouldn't provide it for them because there was no reason to. And now all of a sudden, oh, well, Denise is going to teach for the next 6 years. and I got 100 people in this population at 100 different levels on the content mastery continuum, right? So very common problem. And let me ask you, what did you do? I mean, what was your first after the fear factor took in?
Well, some of my ideas for the future now, moving forward with this particular organization is, well, first of all, there needs to be, we are going to talk about this in a different video, but there needs to be a needs analysis. We need to understand the population as well. And so we need to know, we need to know going in, okay, what is the level? What is the level? Where are they? Do they know how to turn a computer on? Or maybe they aren't sure if it's on the right or the left. They don't know where the button is. Are they at that point? Or are they, can they put a PowerPoint presentation together, a basic one? Or are they literally making these beautiful presentations that, just could be put into templates and PowerPoint themselves? I mean, so what levels are they at?
Well, let me respond to that. Because a lot of times when I've done analysis or gone into those situations, I've had the organization tell me there's nothing we can do about it. You have to teach this group. this is the group that this course is for. There's no other option here. They're all going to be in there. You need to find a way to make the best of it.
And that is the case with this organization. And so, but knowing ahead of time, I think would help to develop this course in a way that we could be then looking at, okay, what can we do if we have these extremes? And everybody's not in the middle somewhere. We have a lot of extremes here. What can we do? And so putting that into the plan, having a plan A and a plan B and maybe a plan C as well, depending on the population, because a lot of times the facilitators are going into this not knowing it all until the day they are standing in front of this classroom, and then they do the Gagne's 9 event of instruction, asking for recall to see where people are, and then finding out, oh my gosh, I don't have a plan for this.
You're all over. Well, I mean, there's a couple of strategies, and I'm not sure what you did. I mean, this is kind of Chuck will find out at the same time everybody else does here. But one of the things that I do in technology when I know I've got this wide of a range of competencies in a cohort is I group people. I have people identified by level of ability to do certain things, which I'll find out very early in gaining attention if I can. Certainly, by the time I get to recall, I better know that. But my strategy typically with those groups is I want to put them either in pairs or 3 or 4, depending on how big a group I've got. And I want someone who has experience, and I want them sitting next to someone who doesn't. And I want to create the environment where we have these subpopulations that can thrive in this environment because you've got somebody that's going to help them. You have a mentor, whatever you want to call this person. And I have found that to work really well. The only time that falls off the cliff is if you have like one person who really knows it and 99 that really don't, and then you got a whole different situation. But I found that grouping and coming up with subpopulations for this is really helpful.
That's one of the plans in action, is make sure that when you figure out your population, if it's at that point at the beginning of a course, and while you're standing in front of them, what do? Okay, one of your plans is you can start to group people together. And what I found is, especially in train the trainer type of situations, the great thing is it's part of the instruction of learning how to train somebody. You are then putting someone to do, you're teaching. They're teaching somebody. So not only is maybe they're learning something new with some of the content you're going to present, but also the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so you're giving them that opportunity to be able to refine their trainer skills by being part of that training. So that works.
Perfect.
Another thing that we haven't actually implemented yet, but planning to maybe we'll consider it for next year, for the next time we do these cohort trainings, will be to perhaps do if we can figure out ahead of time by survey what kind of skill sets we have. If somebody's really struggling, really has no basic knowledge, perhaps it's putting together an online component beforehand to help bring them up to speed on at least the basics of certain things, so that when they get to the classroom, now we can really roll up our sleeves and get into the interesting things. Another part of that is perhaps having that transfer of learning, that resource after they've taken this, by having some classes online, some resources online, I should say. Short videos, micro modules, we love those, right? Micro lessons to help remind them of what they learned, so that if they are struggling when they get back to where they are in their real world and they're like, I can't remember how to do this, these micro lessons can help serve and bridge that gap.
Well, those are great ideas, and they all work depending on the other variables in this. The other thing that you can do, if you can get to this early enough before you actually get into implementation, you're working with an organization, is figure out, does everybody really need this training? Does everybody really need this technology? And sometimes you'll find out that, well, the folks that really need it are this group. And it may be the group that doesn't have it at all yet. It may not be the group that already has it or has some background in it. So I guess the answer to this is it depends. I mean, you gotta know how much juice you got in making decisions, and most of the time we don't have any. What can I do creatively I just walked into the room. I got them for 8 hours. This is what I got to do. I don't have any choices about design except in the moment, design moment, as we talk about all the time. So I think the best message to all of us, and for anyone that's looking at this has gone through the same thing or is fearful of it, it will happen someday if it hasn't already. So just be prepared for it. But the best thing is just step back and look at your population, your cohort as a whole. And what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Can you join them together? Can you put them into smaller groups where they can work and mentor together? And as you said, this is once again a train-to-trainer experience in this specific case where, okay, well, you're going to learn how to teach in a different way. You're going to learn how to mentor across a small group as opposed to facilitating in front of a large group. And these are all great facilitator skills. So I guess the message from the design side that I would suggest is just take a breath. It happens to all of us. Just do the best you can. You can get in there early with the organization and pick out the folks that maybe need a little bit of stuff ahead of time, do a pre-course, micro-course, whatever you need to do. Second, decide if they really need it. Does everybody actually need this? Is it certification, or is it just HR stuff that you can get around? And go from there. But rest assured, we all do it. I don't know what percentage of time I walk into a diverse prereq group, but 30, 40%. I mean, just kind of the way it is. So feel good about it. Be creative. Don't let it get to you.
Well, thank you, Chuck, for pointing all of these things out, these tips. I think they really are helpful for anyone who is in the design phase right now and struggling with this same thing. Hopefully, you're able to take some of these tips that Chuck talked about and some of the ideas that I brought to surface as well and help bring them into what you're doing to help implement a really great training situation. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button and comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on this.